Hey everybody, this is Bobo Fidos for part 2 of the multi-part video of me playing 5-10. When we last left off, we were at the spot where I had 3-bet Ace King. Ace King, very nice hand. And I think all my thoughts on table 1 in terms of Ace 5, playing it, so on and so forth, were pretty much expressed in that video. So if you notice that hand and you want to hear more about it, I recommend going back and rewatching the end of that video. So anyway, I'm not exactly sure at what point I started talking about this hand, but let's begin with the flop. Also, table 3, again, I'm not sure if this was included in the last part, but I had raised King-Queen suited from the cutoff. I was certainly going to play to the 3-bet. It's a very, very pretty, attractive, good hand, but fast Eddie shoves, and I obviously cannot call an all-in here, so I just fold. So it's going to be a spot where I thought was going to be interesting, and we're going to see a flop, but I didn't end up happening. So there's two things to note here when I re-raise Ace King off. First off, I think it's a very strong hand, and it warrants, the pre-flop play. I don't really need to expound upon that. I don't think calling would be correct against most people, especially when you're out of position. They might take flops wider. That's good. We have a really strong hand. So there are three different, and again, I'm not sure if I am repeating myself, but if I am, all the better, because this is an important spot that comes up somewhat frequently. So with Ace King high on a 10-3-3 rainbow board, which is completely dry, it's not draw heavy, that's what I was trying to say. We have two overcards, a backdoor straight draw, and sometimes the best hand. Now there's three different ways to approach this flop. One, if our opponent is very tight in terms of calling the 3-bet, we think we don't have the best hand very often, therefore a c-bet won't show profit. We should simply check fold, meaning a lot of his range are pairs which aren't going to fold, or like big pairs which are trapping. So we just simply give up the hand, even though that means every now and again he's going to bluff us, but if he's so tight, there just isn't a lot of air in his range. In a normal 6-max setting, especially if we feel there's value in re-raising Ace-King, which again, 95% this applies to them, I don't like check folding. Number two, we could check call. We do this because, again, the strength of our hand, we feel that he's not going to fold better. Of course he'll fold worse every now and again, but meaning if we bet, we don't think he's going to fold like pocket sevens ever, and it's just going to kind of build a pot with a second best hand out of position, which is really like a tough way to play poker. But we feel he's going to stab at a lot of hands that would have just folded, i.e. like a 9-7 suited, and against those, kind of you're trying to play the best hand. With other marginal hands on this board, like maybe 9s, I prefer that if we raise 9s to begin with. We might not feel that the dynamic is such that we could do that. But anyway, if they're fairly bluff happy. But the truth is, it's very difficult to show down Ace-King in a re-raised pot, especially given the PSR. So I'm not sure, especially not really knowing his tendencies against unknown, that's best. The last option is simply to bet as a semi-bluff. If we got raised here, it would be suspicious. I mean, this is our best possible draw. We have two overcards that are generally clean. We don't really expect him to call re-raise with Ace-10 off or King-10 off too often. Maybe Ace-10 suited or King-10 suited. I mean, those are reasonable, especially because I re-raise kind of small pre. But, and of course, he could be trapping, and I guess he could have a 3, although having 3x, there's only one combination of Ace-3 suited anyway, diamonds. I'm just expecting to have 6 clean outs very, very often. So actually, it's a spot with what we deem a weak aggressive gamble, meaning if he raises us and we just call, the Ace and the King are technically scare cards in terms of his weaker marginal hands, so it's very difficult to get paid off, especially because we're out of position. So I'd probably shove. It's one of the few hands I shove as a semi-bluff because I don't feel my opponent is going to bluff raise that often, so we don't have a lot of fold equity. Meaning, if I re-raise him with 9-8 suited, which I certainly could do, if he raises this board, even if we have like a 3 straight flush, he's going to win the pot. We have 9 high, but I just don't think he's going to raise fold enough to get it in with like no equity. Here, since I think we do have like 25% equity, it's a world different hand. So we're semi-bluffing. Once we bet, and that's if raised. If he folds, that's fine. Certainly, if he just calls, though, on this specific board, he could be floating. He could have a marginal hand where he's unsure, like, the 7s, 5s, which will peel one bet maybe. Or a big hand that's trapping, since it's in position and we're not deep at all relative PSR because it's a re-raised pot, just 100 BBs, he can simply just give a freebie. Against that range, I'm probably going to barrel any card that improves my hand. So an ace for value, king for value, a queen because I pick up a gutter, and jack because I pick up a gutter. It's worth noting as well, those particular hands somewhat improve, like, they could hit top pair, like, queen 10 if it hits a queen, but we still have, 6 outs against that because of the paired board, plus the 4 that we pick up with a gut shot. Also, it's conceivable for that to be in our range, whether we already had an overpair to begin with, so on and so forth. So basically, those overcards, the 10, which don't really improve his hand range, but improves our equity, also kind of are the worst cards for his range, like 7s, 8s, because again, it puts 2 overcards, and it's conceivable, so on and so forth. So anyway, those are the cards we're going to barrel as a bluff and for value. If it's a card under a 10, like a 9, an 8, those kind of like hit his set range. He's more apt to like peel with those mid pairs. It doesn't really help our perceived range, because again, our perceived range, how often are we going to have like 9x, or I guess we could have those under pairs, but sometimes we don't even bet this flop. So basically, if he was ahead on the flop, he probably isn't going to fold to those turns very often. So we're down to kind of like the split of cards. I'm probably going to check fold about half the deck, which, given my situational hand, makes the float attractive. Of course, he doesn't know our situational hand, and I'm not sure if floating, especially if I'm going to second barrel, other, combinations and so forth. And of course, I could always have a better hand, is the best play. As is the case, I kind of luck box, I hit a king, and now I've got 2 ways to play it. I could check raise all in, which again kind of violates the initial plan, which was betting, the overcards, which is fine. If I think he's floating, I earn an extra bet. The only argument against kind of check shoving all in, which is known as stackadong, is if he has an underpair, the 7s, 8s, which on any overcard was not going to put money in, but then he checks, it's a big pot, kind of seeding those 2 outs where I will get stacked on any river. It's kind of like a losing play. It's hard to say how often he is going to float versus not floating, and I don't know enough about the player to gauge that, but that's the fear if you do check and let him check behind. But again, it's so dry, like, if I'm ahead, which I think I'm ahead, 95, 98% of the time, that kind of thing. Because rarely he has king 10 suited, which there's one combination of that, or I guess aces or kings, one combination of that. So again, I feel I have the best hand 98% of the time. We're going broke easily. Anyway, the other plan is an installment plan, which is simply bet as I would if it was a queen or jack, with the intention of shoving the river. But unfortunately, he folds, and c'est la vie. That's the first hand, first spot. Could have been more interesting, but it wasn't. But I pick it up. Oh yes, raising 2s, 5-handed, under the gun. I get called by kind of a fishier player. I'm going to c-bet here. It's technically a bluff. He insta-calls me. This is how you should think about this situation. On the flop, I'm betting as a bluff. Yes, even though I have a pair, it's a decent bluff because sometimes I have the best hand, meaning those times when I think he's going to play straightforwardly that, he didn't pair, so on, and he has hidden equity against my hand, he's simply going to muck, which is fine. It's too difficult to kind of play it by check calling, and I think against a fish, especially with a looser range, it's too weak to just check fold the king high board. So I'm going to bet as a bluff. If he raised me, I'd give it up. I think the jack of clubs hits his range. He could have called me with a king, a 5, a flush draw, middle pair, so on. Very, very small percent of that is actually going to check fold in that card. Plus, if I'm behind, which I feel I'm behind a lot, I only have 2 outs. So just one of those spots that you have to give up the hand. I was tempted to play this ace-8 off because this guy was a short stack and kind of bad. It's worth noting, like, isolating fish or donks doesn't necessarily mean just raising their limps. Oftentimes it can be playing more speculative hands, such as the ace-8 off out of position. But I didn't play it. I don't know. I think I don't think he's good, this opponent, in the table 1. But I don't know enough, like, I don't know enough about how bad he is. And by the way, about the comments for the first video, everyone was telling me it's an Argentinian flag, which was my second guess. I swear. So. Was indeed my second guess. So I'm opening any 2 on the button, table 1. I shift, based on what I call different tier system or so, tier 5 being any 2. The worse the blinds are, or the tighter the blinds, they could be very good players, but if they're very exploitably tight, and it's a small edge that you can kind of exploit, I guess, then you should be raising any 2. I probably wasn't raising any 2 in table 3 or 4, because if you notice the blinds there are far more competent, but I probably was going to do that. Well, I'm probably not on table 2. So table 1 was probably... Oh, and this is something I didn't get a chance to talk about in the first video, but the first retaping of the video, I did talk about this, and I thought it was very important. It's worth noting I would play the ace-6 suited against re-raise very often, but not against a fish here, because, he showed me ace-king, so I technically soul red. But A, he's shorter stack, so I have, less implied odds in the re-raise pot. B, I think he's kind of a bad player in terms of not really having a wide range there. Like, I think it's a good hand very often. So those kind of factors together mean there's no reason for me to play a6 suited out of position. Um, but it wouldn't stop me from playing a6 suited against many other people. um, anyway, so I'm actually going to extend to hit on this key because I think it's important. Or, I'll talk as the hands are going on, I suppose. I don't like doing that as much, but for the sake of the video. Which is table selection. There's something to be said for playing at tables full of regulars. If you feel they're not very good regulars, then by all means, play on those tables. It's worth noting table 2, Jack 8 off. I think Albatru is not a very good player, so I'm going to raise the limp fairly wide to isolate. There's certain hands that would overlimp here, like Jack 8 suited. I might overlimp rather than iso raise, and I get limp shoved on. I've actually seen him do that with like Ace Queen. Obviously, I can't call on all in with Jack High. I don't have the pot odds. So I just muck it. I complete 10-7 off because it's a near family pot, but then I'm going to fold the raise here. Even though I'm ending action, 10-7 off is cheese. I do have relative position, but 3x I'm just not going to... If he like min-raised, I would call the min-raise, I guess. Table 3, I flat Jack 10 suited in position against Razzie. I've actually played Razzie online as well. Online before, for sure. One occasion last year, I think he went off on me in chat and got his chat banned for a while. But anyway, I've actually played with him live as well. And here it's just a spot where I could re-raise Jack 10 suited. I would against various people, but I'm going to slide into what's known as a tweener hand. This is done very often, and I want to be bluffing a certain percentage of hands, and Jack 10 suited normally is a good hand to bluff, simply because it has a lot of post-flop value if they just call. But I don't want to get 4-bet off it. I think I can play a cold call pot in position for profit, for sure. I mean, it's a pretty hand, tier 2, so I don't need to re-raise it. Versus if I had something like ace-7 off, where I don't think I can cold call and show profit, it's just too weak, I might re-raise with that hand rather than the Jack 10 suited. This is a concept I talk about a lot and I really preach, I really believe in, and I don't think I need to say more about it than in this spot. I'm going to cold call a Jack 10 suited and I'm happy about it. So real fast, I guess, about table selection is, if you feel there's, table full of regulars and they're not that good or so, then by all means, sit down. But there's something to be said for various tables showing different amount of profit. And, judging also seat selection. This is something on Strade's videos I think he preached, and I think it was a very good thing that I kind of brush over. But table 2, for example, I think this isn't exactly, a great table. I think these players are fairly competent. The weak player, Albatru, is completely across from me. I have a fairly spewy, aggressive player with absolute position on me, and Brian, so I'm not really loving the seat. Versus table 1, I have position on kind of the more regular players, even though Dankness is kind of tighter. With Brian or whatnot, I'm in position, whereas I have the 2 fish exactly after me. I'd rather have position on the fish so I can play more pots with them, but I'm not complaining. I think table 1 is a pretty nice spot. Table 4, this is a perfect example of that. Even though these 4 guys, Skeleton Jar, Fast Eddie, Razzie, Lars Vegas, are probably competent to varying degrees. Obviously, competent is a relative term. But the really horrible fish, where you've already played from video 1, Studroid, I have absolute position. I think that this is a great table simply because of my seat. If I had Fast Eddie's seat, I might not like the table nearly as much. It'd still be a decent table, but I think I have what's known as the Jesus seat. And lastly, table 3 is probably the worst table by far because it's all regulars and they should all be competent. Plus, there's some very good regulars here. Polyballer, for example, who I think is a very good player. So, and that's an example where on table 2 he sat, but I have absolute position on him, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. So in terms of table ratings, in terms of rating which table is kind of best, I think 4 is great. I think 2 is okay. 1 is very good, and 3 is terrible. So we're gonna resume. So I flop a gut shot. If he bet, I would definitely play on, whether I just call and emulate a float, but with what's known, with not just hidden equity, but some equity. But he checked really fast. It's just a spot where I have, if he check raises me, that would be really weird, and I might be able to float it anyway. But, I'm just going to bet my draw. He checked me in position. I do have Jack High. If I had something like pocket 7s, where I, might try and get to showdown, which, I might not. It's a very, very small pot, so I'm not really that worried. Here I'm just stabbing about half pot, and if I pick it up with Jack High, I'm thrilled. And this is a perfect example, table 1. of the hands that I'm going to re-raise versus flat call. If I'm not going to re-raise Jack